All right. So today is what is today? It's the 29th of July, and we're going to be reviewing today's trades. Really rough morning, guys. It was freaking rough. Now, it still was green, but this morning drained all my brain cells. It really did. We'll just start from this top, which is my pre-market analysis. It was bullish. And from the start, today was rough, man. Like, today was not a fun time for me. As you can see, NQ is a little bit stronger than ES. Basic momentum liquidity analysis puts me at bullish for NQ pre-market high. And next P2 will be bullish for ES pre-market high, this yellow line here. You can kind of make out like a very fractal kind of cup and handle formation. So I'm wondering, maybe NQ sweeps high, we pull back, and then we do something like that. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So mildly bullish pre-market sentiment. The problem is we're kind of close to this PT already. So at open, I'm hoping that we can fall back down a little bit. And then I can take calls on the invalidation of that pullback to the supply break. But that's not what happened. So I jump back to the 1 minute time frame here. This was the first candle market open. Now, yeah, so that went out the window. ES still had plenty of room to its BT though. And, I am triggered into calls via ES, right? ES validated majority of the move. I have bullish pivots overhead. Looks like strong momentum. As you can see at the end of this candle, NQ put in less of a selling wick than ES did. So ES is a little bit weaker, okay? But I understand this, but I also am thinking NQ is more likely to flip weak because it's at these highs, just crossed the pivot. ES hasn't even gotten to its major pivot yet, its first one. So I know ES is a little bit weaker, but I enter SPX calls anyways. Now, I do enter half size though, because as you guys can see, we have potential inverse head and shoulders. So I'm like, all right, inverse head and shoulders, if we want to pull back to demand, that's fine. I'll allow myself to average down if we get to demand and put in a little buying wick or something. Otherwise, if we dumped like to here, I'm just going to stop out of my half size position. So this is where the trade starts, and immediately ES flips incredibly weak. It's kind of been a trend this week for some reason. I mean, it happened yesterday. I think it happened on Friday as well. I don't know what's been going on lately, but I keep getting into trades like this. And I knew ES was a little bit weaker, but I did not anticipate that it would be like exponentially weaker. Like, it is crazy how small NQ's red candle was and how large ES's was. And NQ even had a large selling wick, meaning this candle was green. ES didn't have that at all. So I'm like, well, I'm thinking about stopping out. I'm going to wait one more candle, though, and see how that goes. And I was going to stop out on this candle, but it put in a huge buying wick. So I did end up averaging down right around here when I started putting it in the buying wick. I entered the trade initially at 2.85, and I added at 2.05. So my average was roughly $2.45. But look, NQ's back at pretty much a new high of day. Look where ES is. Like, it is damn near going opposite directions. Very annoying, very, very, very unlucky, and I'm stopping out of this if this buying wick invalidates. And look at this. This is like, and it's also extremely frustrating because I knew ES was a little bit weaker, and I technically could have entered NQ, but I still side with my, ES entry, my SPX calls, because it was just a much more likely trade. I just got absolutely hornswoggled is what happened. And yeah, NQ puts in another huge green candle. ES puts in a red one. It looks terrible. At this point, I'm bearish. I am beyond bearish on ES to get low of day, and I absolutely hate it. It's very rare that it happens, but I hate when I'm in a call trade that I know I should be in puts right now. It's true, I really should be in puts. I mean, once we get to this point right here, this is a put trade. I'm triggered into puts, but I'm stuck in calls, and that doesn't happen very often. Most of the time I'm in a trade, even if it's not looking the greatest, I think it's more likely to stop out. Pretty much never do I think puts, the opposite trade, actually has a higher chance of winning because my edge is statistically favorable on every single trade, right? So puts were a far better trade. The reason why is because ES is weak. While NQ is skyrocketing, ES is going down. What do we think is going to happen if NQ goes sideways? ES is going to go down. What happened if NQ goes down? It's going to go down even more, right? And on top of that, NQ is overbought. So I'm thinking it's very likely it's at least going to consolidate. So, yeah, I need to get out of this trade. Well, I do end up, look at this. Like, look at this. This is terrible. I end up stopping out of this trade. I don't know if it was on this candle or the next one. The calls rebounded a little bit. I averaged out at 2.05. I end up selling them early at 2.2 for a 10% loss. I could not hold these calls. This became a very, very clear put trade. So I said, dumping these early for puts on this candle, as you can see. And now my finger's on the trigger for puts. I can't hold this. If ES can't figure out how to go up while NQ is skyrocketing like this, I need to be in puts. I just need this buying wick to invalidate just a little bit more. So now here I am waiting on puts to enter. And now ES decides to shoot up now that I'm out of it. So that was cool, I guess. So it starts shooting up. The calls flip green by like 10%. I'm like, well, that's annoying. And I'm kind of thinking, imagine if ES now goes all the way up to my PT. That would be rough. But I'm unwilling to enter now. I mean, technically, I could enter calls. If we get to here, I would be triggered in. But I don't know if I would because NQ would be even more overbought. So it's really puts or nothing. So at this point, if we invalidate this bounce, I'm still going to be in puts, even though I have a feeling ES is trying to flip strong on me. We get a potential reversal candle there on both of them. ES is continuing up. But then we pull back. Supply did a number. I filled on this candle roughly here. And I didn't quite fill half size, a little bit bigger than, I didn't quite fill full size. I filled a little bit bigger than half size. And pretty much my rationale is if we bounce out of demand again, I like to be able to average down. But really, I'm going to add the rest of my contracts roughly here if we completely invalidate the buying wick because I got in a little early. And my first PT is here this low. And we'll just kind of see what happens. Well, the next candle happened, and it was super bearish. It was beautiful. And it's at this point that I tell you guys in my alert channel, I think NQ is going to invalidate this entire run. ES super weak looks great. This is actually a perfect double bottom on ES, so I'm very bearish for that to break. And we end up bouncing. Now, ES flips strong here as a result of this pivot, which, I mean, makes sense. Did my trading view just freeze? I think it did. Oh, maybe not. But I do end up adding some even more puts here. I was a little bit bigger than full size. I told you guys I'm very bearish for a bounce, and a bounce is a decent opportunity. Now, it was sketchy because at this point, ES is a little stronger than NQ. You can see it's bouncing a lot higher. NQ's not. And you'll see that strength continue as NQ tries to drag it down. But ultimately, it did work out. And not only did it work out, but the market absolutely dumped. And I sold pretty much everything on this candle. It did get a little bit lower on this next one. As you can see, look at this. Look how much weaker NQ flipped. So ES stayed strong. But this ended up being a 100% gains trade. I averaged about 80, like 85%. So this was a huge win. Now, still very annoyed at this point because the first trade could have easily been a win if I took QQQ calls. Or I waited one more candle to sell out of the trade. So as far as win rate, I was pretty annoyed. But at least I was happy to be bright green on the day at this point. This was absolutely beautiful. And now as far as trades are concerned, I can't really enter anything. The only things I can enter is if we come all the way back up, I can enter calls, or if we put in bearish consolidation. And at this point, I only want 2 oscillations because we're very oversold. So I'm not willing to get into potential bearish consolidation at the first oscillation. Ideally, I want 2 oscillations for a put trade. So that's at this point what I'm looking for. NQ bounces. We come back down. That is 1 oscillation. Okay, if we bounce again and invalidate it, I'm able to hop in. Now, NQ, you can see how much weaker NQ is than ES. And just like the last trade, I entered this pretty much half size. It was still a little bit early. Now, my PT was demand, pretty much in demand. Stop loss roughly here. But I was planning on averaging up just like the last trade. If we further confirm this bear flag and start getting a a break to the downside. So ideally right here I'd like to add. But this is a fairly early entry, which I was willing to take because look how much weaker NQ is than ES. ES has invalidated a majority of this bounce. NQ is not. NQ is a clean bear flag. ES is kind of gearing up to be a reversal. However, did reject the 61.8 fib. So I'm thinking at the minimum the 61.8 rule will play out, which we talked about yesterday. And that puts our PT back right here. And if we get right here, that's pretty much going to be NQ new low of day. And I'm hoping that it doesn't just get new low of day, but it also gets demand. And the reason I cannot use low of day as a price target is because the risk to reward would be too crappy. Right? Look, 0.8 risk to reward. Doesn't work, right? I need demand. Well, I average up, and we end up bouncing, unfortunately. We got so close, but put in a bullish piercing line. I had to move my stop loss up to here because I was full size at this point. Now, granted, my average was a little bit higher because I did add some. So my initial entry was 81. I think I added at like 84, 85, I think, something like that. So my average was a little bit higher than the alert, which means the alert percent gains, I got a little bit less than that. But at this point, I thought I was going to stop out, and it sucked because NQ was super strong. But it didn't, and it ended up somehow chopping all the way down into demand. And I sold now. I did call out before this actually broke to the downside. I said ES is compressing a ton. It's going to break out soon because typically when you have major compression like this and price action is nearing the end of this compression, get ready for a breakout, either to the upside or downside. I'm hoping it's to the downside because NQ is back to being strong. The potential inverse head and shoulders on NQ is a bit concerning, but it's super fractal. I don't think it's very likely to play out. But for me, I was kind of drawing this potential falling wedge on NQ and thinking, well, if we did get to demand, I would like to take calls out of demand as a reversal trade. But I didn't anticipate this freaking trade taking, 30 minutes. Well, we did end up getting demand. I did sell everything here. Sold everything besides the tiny runner in case ES wanted low of day, and I sold that runner on this candle. The calls from the alert price went 50%. I averaged about 35% on the trade. So very happy with it. And I was heavily considering calls at this point. I meant the puts earlier, but I was heavily considering calls because ES has a perfect double top. Not a major one because his left touch isn't actually a full pivot. It's just kind of a pause. But I do like calls. And I'd like to enter calls roughly here. As last trade I wanted to potentially take. And it would be roughly here-ish on NQ, anticipating the falling wedge break to the upside. But you guys know I only trade the first hour, and the first hour came to an end, and I'm like, okay, the first hour is at an end, so that means if I'm going to continue, if I take one more trade, I'm going to really need to make sure my psychology is intact, which means I'm only taking this trade if I'm willing to lose money on this train. In other words, I'm only going to take this trade if I'm willing to spend the amount of money required to find out if this trade is going to be profitable. So am I willing to spend money on this trade to find out if it's going to be profitable? As we started chopping up, that answer became a no. Because you can see, yes, NQ was really strong. It looked okay. But we did still have a rising wedge here on NQ, and it's still just a choppy mess. I didn't want it. I didn't want it at all. I'm like, I'm not willing to lose money on this trade. You know what? Today was a pretty crappy day. This trade barely missed my PT. Well, yeah, this trade barely missed my PT. Went up 30% gains. Went all the way back down into the red. I was pretty much waiting to stop out of this trade for 20 minutes. And then got lucky and it ended up coming back down. And then this first trade drained my my patience because super unlucky with how weak ES flipped. If I chose NQ, it would have made a lot. It would have been a very green trade. But regardless, I mean, it was a good call selling this trade early. This bounce is very surprising. Wasn't very likely to happen. But regardless, it did end up breaking to the downside, which was kind of my hypothesis. And I did happen to be able to catch the downside, which is very nice as well. And really, it's only... Well, if we play this back, if I didn't sell this trade here, I definitely wouldn't have sold it up here because now I'm at least bullish for the supply break, which means I would have stopped out on this candle, and there's a decent chance that I would have missed out on the puts. Because instead of waiting to enter puts, I was waiting to stop out on the trade, and my stop loss should have been my entry, and it's very unlikely that I would have reversed my trade. I usually don't reverse my trades. It's just bad psychology and just opens the door to a bunch of psychological deterioration. So in the end, it was a good call. And I averaged 80-ish percent, 85% on the big trade. Only took a 10% loss on the first trade, and then 35% on the third trade, which is this one. Very happy with my results, especially given how crappy today was. And note, yesterday was crappy as well, so I'm thinking it probably has to do with FOMC being tomorrow and the interest rate decision. So tomorrow I'm going to be trading much lighter size. I'm still going to trade it, but after tomorrow, ideally, price action starts becoming tolerable again. And so, anyways, I chose not to trade the calls and end up working out because the drop happened. So worked out well. So as far as my analysis went, it was pretty good. Just got scammed by ES. That sucked a lot. But as far as execution, all those things, I thought it was a fine day, as most days are. But with that being said, does anyone have any questions regarding my analysis at all? No, everyone's good? All right, sweet. Well, I'm going to post this to YouTube. I'll let you guys know when it's posted. And Mentorship Group 1, get ready for a weekly meeting. And if you continue to trade, good luck. The market is extremely volatile. It's moving awesome. Look at this movement. Like, this is beautiful. Look at the demand bouncing. Or the demand bounces on ES. This is really nice. And the supply rejections too here. Very nice supply and demand day. But all right, I will see you guys later. Good luck if you keep trading, and let me know if you guys need anything.